Welcome to VCs Off the Record. This is Real Talk with Real Investors. Your host, Gayla Jennings-O'Byrne, CEO of Rockstar Capital and co-founder of the Rockstar Fund, has spent 30 years in finance. And I'm here too. I'm Victoria Bird. I'm the Chief Content Officer and Creative Director of Rockstar Media. And I've spent 30 years in media. We champion female entrepreneurs, we champion diverse teams, and we're both passionate about stories that change old narratives. We're looking to inform you, inspire you, and help you get your bag and your dreams.
Welcome to VCs Off the Record. I'm your host, Gayla Jennings-O'Byrne, the CEO of Rockstar Capital and the co-founder of Rockstar Fund. And I'm here with Victoria Burt, who is all things creative, all things content, and most importantly, she is just my right-hand woman.
Woman, right?
I did, yeah, I said it right.
Yeah, you said it.
Yeah.
It's interesting. You know what I love? I don't know if Victoria, pause, because we have another Victoria coming on the show today. So you're like, which Victoria is it that's coming on the show?
You saw that.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Of course.
See, I don't have a poker face. It's a good thing I don't play poker.
Yeah, that's okay.
People could read my thoughts.
That's okay. Yeah, Victoria is, we were trying to get her on earlier in the season, and she's so impressive. And we're so lucky that we got to speak to her today because she's got a lot going on, a lot of new stuff.
Yeah, listen, what's the saying? Man plans and God laughs. We were planning for so long to get her on, but it worked out amazing to have her come today because she's got some new stuff going on that I don't even know about and I really want to hear about.
Yeah,
I'm just that nosy. I want to know.
It made me think about like what we're talking about today and how it fits just so perfectly because the things that I want to ask you about is about raising capital because one of the things that I'm learning about as far as VCs and what they go out and do is they have to create the fund, right? And they have to raise the capital.
That's right.
And there are different ways to do that. And I wanted to just hear a little bit more about that from you.
Yeah, it's interesting that you picked up on that because I don't think until about a year ago that I even really thought of myself as an entrepreneur. I thought of myself as an investor, a venture capitalist. But the notion of entrepreneurs I thought were the people that we worked with, right? That I get up every day in service of and that we invest in and work with through the Rockstar Academy. But the reality is, as fund managers, we're entrepreneurs too. We're building businesses. And this concept of it takes money to raise money is real, right? Just getting to that conference, getting across town and taking a potential investor to dinner, that's capital, that's money, right? Building the infrastructure, the legal, the operations, all of that, which startups and entrepreneurs deal with, fund managers deal with as well. So I'm glad that we have Victoria on today because we're going to get to see that from a different perspective, and she brings some real clarity around that nuance as well. So I really like that you picked up on that.
Yeah, let's not waste time. Let's let people, because it was a great conversation. Let's let people get to it. This episode of VCs Off the Record is brought to you by Rockstar Ghetto Film School Entrepreneurial Academy.
Hey, Rockstars. Today we are joined with Victoria Kennedy, the founder of Patternist. We're going to get into that, but can we just pause for a minute? I mean, you're a product expert. You have started and worked with lots of startups. Mm-hmm. You're a unicorn in your own right. Like, it's just really beautiful. Can we just acknowledge that? Can I give you flowers?
Sure.
Can I give you your flowers? Okay. But here's something I want people to know too. You have helped scale 6 products. You know the ins and outs of customer research, so people listen because this is the girl you want to talk to. You know the ins and outs of product strategy and team leadership. Like, there's nothing you don't know. I can't wait for you to tell us all about this. But let's start with how you are.
Good. I'm a little, I was saying I was a little tired earlier, which is funny because I'm powered by the sun. So usually a day like this, I would be like all over the place. But I had the stresses of trying to move in New York City, which will tire anyone out. But I feel good. I'm glad I'm here.
Okay, that got me tired just thinking about moving. Maybe that's why I've had my apartment for 20 some years.
I mean, you're smart. You're real smart for that.
So let's start with, and I haven't even told her where we're starting, so this is going to be new to her too. But let's start with the last company that you founded and you were general partner of, Seed to Harvest, because that's where we met.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that company.
Sure.
The closure of that company, and then we're going to dive into Patternist.
Sure, absolutely. So I started thinking about Seed to Harvest probably late 2020. My background's in product management, product leadership. And so I built a lot of products from 0 to 1, both at like smaller companies, at like Fortune 50 companies as well, and learned a lot about like the similarities and the differences. And I got really interested. I was always interested in that kind of beginning part. And then I get kind of bored once it got to the product market fit. Even though there was still lots to do, it just wasn't the part I loved. And so I'd usually end up like quitting, or sometimes I was consulting so I could leave anyway. And then I found investing and I was like, oh, I can just stay in the part I like and I don't have to keep quitting jobs. So this is great. And at the time, I think there was a lot more conversations about investing in like diverse founders, invest in women of color. But I didn't see a lot of people with like my specific expertise in like product doing that. And I realized so much of my career building up to this, because I was always at companies where I was like the first product person or one of like two maybe, and we had completely different things we were doing. And people would give me product advice, and it'd be like Google advice, like do a design sprint or do these things, talk to your data team. I was like, what data team? I'm the data team. They forgot to put in data, so I have to figure that out now. And there's no user researcher. And so I had to figure out what's my toolkit, what are my frameworks that actually work in this like very low resource, very high stakes, but like you don't always have enough information to make the best decision, but you have to learn
like a startup.
Yeah. So it's like constantly building that. And I realized in how like probably even earlier than 2020, how helpful that was to founders. I just started talking with and advising and working with founders and helping them with product strategy. And so it really felt like a nice transition. And I reached out to someone I used to work with who's a designer and engineer. And so we really focused on starting Seed to Harvest together, focusing on women of color founders at the pre-seed and seed stages. We spent about 2.5 years, or 2 years, time is wild since 2020. But I would say like 2.5 years really like fundraising, and of course the like worst fundraising time in a very long time to try to raise a fund. And we got traction, but it was really clear, like for me, financial standpoint, I didn't realize at the beginning how much money I would have to use in order to fundraise. Like paying money to ask for money is very interesting. But also when you like partner with people and like their lives change, you constantly have to check in. Is like, does this still make sense? Can you still give as much financially, mentally, emotionally as you could when we first started this? And we really just came to a point where we both couldn't do it in the way we both needed to be there for each other to do it. And so we're still really great friends, but we really decided we could put it down. We actually made 2 investments, still very much in touch with those founders, and really love the working with early stage founders and finding great companies. But really what's started to move me is like, what are the things that I've found? I mean, I'm a product person, so like what are the problems I've been seeing in the space, and also the opportunities to solve those problems. And so I really have started to kind of focus in on that and starting to think of something new, which is how I got to Patternist.
Nice. Okay. And we're going to get into Pattern in a minute, but I want to pull out something really neat in all that you've just said, which is that you really have to check in with the other people that are involved with the company. And that experience is going to carry you so much further as an investor, because those are real issues that other startups are dealing with. So kudos to you that, you know, in this, you are pulling out some really good lessons that are going to just make you a better investor.
Yeah, me and my best friend used to joke all the time. We're always learning lessons. We're like, could we just stop one day? Like, I would love to stop learning lessons, but you don't. And you kind of, and what's interesting, I found out there's lessons I thought I learned, but had to relearn in this new context. So once you kind of just let go of like that, maybe like not enjoying that, it becomes a lot easier. And it is really cool to see how much I've learned. And that's why I've done my whole career. It's like, I love throwing myself in the deep end and being like, okay, time to figure out how to swim.
Yeah.
Like,
Listen, stay curious. I would tell anyone that, stay curious. I think that's really where joy comes from. Okay, so part of this show is an elevator pitch.
Ooh, okay.
Startups are always having to give elevator pitches to us. Founders are always telling us about their companies. Is there an elevator pitch that you can give us about Pattern that tells us what it is?
I can tell you how I've been telling people about it.
Yeah.
We'll
and by
see
the way, listeners, we are, can I say this is an exclusive? It sounds
Sure.
fancy. It sounds fancy.
Sure.
We're gonna use it. We are getting an exclusive insider peek into this new organization that Victoria is launching. So please tell us, Patternist.
Okay, so something I've really noticed that, and actually I got a good feedback on the first part today, is I've noticed like the quality of startups decreasing, but it's not actually the quality of startups, it's the quality of startups getting funding, because funding is actually really incentivized by solution building, not necessarily by talking about the problem you're solving. As a product person, I know that you really de-risk a company and you really set up for long-term success. It's very clear, and that's how I invested. If it's very clear from the beginning, not only what problem it is that you're solving and who has that problem, but also what's the opportunity in solving that. And so I realized that that was a problem I was seeing, and a big part of that is because incentives aren't aligned with the funders and the founders. So I've been thinking a lot about how do you align those incentives. And another thing that I've noticed is that there's never been a big opportunity to actually great financial returns on solving really big societal problems. So how can you actually match funding across risk capital, philanthropy, this blended capital stack into a problem statement and actually build companies that are solving those problems? And so Patternist is really going to be a company building model focused on solving really big problems and uniting capital around it. And what I think is really interesting about it that I've had to like tease out with people, it's not about doing any one specific vertical, it's about problem solving as a skill and doing that in any space. So whether that's climate or healthcare, but really focus on solving those problems and aligning that to financial returns.
Yeah. That's a lot.
It is.
No, and in a beautiful way. Like that's a lot. Like so much of what you see in the marketplace may sort of just tackle one piece of that, right? And ignore other pieces of it. But you've built this blend that's going to be really neat to see.
Yeah, I'm excited. And it's been really interesting this past like year of like exploration and also just like opening myself up to new things. Like I helped an organization that's amazing organization that's focused on young women and girls of color that through their work with them and like this group asking for guidance on entrepreneurship decided that they wanted to start a fund, and I helped them figure out and ultimately hire the person who's going to be running that fund. And it made me realize that there's so much capital out there that isn't being utilized to actually solve these problems in a company building way, right? It's like we invest in nonprofits or they give grants, which is great, and that should happen. But if you think of it like a portfolio model, an investor, there are other ways you could be making impact. And I want to help people realize that.
What does it look like for how you'll work with someone? Like, would a traditional startup come to you but say, I want to understand the entire capital stack and work with you on that? Or would a nonprofit come to you? What's it going to look like?
So I'm actually working through that now, and like a product person, figuring out what's like the first MVP. So the initial MVP has actually been taking everything that's in my head. And it's interesting because I had a really dear friend of mine say this to me. He's also a product person who's in investing. And they were saying, like, in my head, I kept talking about how this has been a few months of thinking. And she was like, no, it feels deeper than that. It feels like you've been working on this for a while. And that problem statement work is in the problem definition and opportunity mapping framework has been in my head for over a decade because that's how I built products.
That's how you think.
That's how I think. But I've never actually taken the time to sit down and write it out and like walk someone through it through like a real framework. It's been one-on-one or when I'm advising people an accelerator, and I kind of have built different parts of it. And so it really took, especially like the last like 6 weeks to write it down. And then I was in LA for LA Tech Week, actually walking the first set of founders through that. And so I'm walking additional founders through that and getting feedback on it in the next couple of weeks. But how I'm starting actually is working with the organization in a specific space, specifically the climate resiliency space. And they're amazing. I've been talking to them for over a year. And it's kind of a greenfield project to really define what are the problems in this space and how should they be thinking about that and like which problems do they want to go after. And I'm looking for another organization. I'm really interested actually in the ethics and AI space. I'm really curious how you incentivize and align funding with, for lack of a better phrase, good behavior. So, regulation is going to take a long time. it probably also won't be great just because of the level of understanding. And, at the pace everything is moving, you have to kind of align incentives with the way the network works. And so how can you do that from the very beginning? I think right now is a really important time to do that. And so I'm looking for organizations who are interested in that space. But I want them to be very different because I want people to see that it's not about, again, a specific vertical, but it's about problem definition, opportunity mapping in and of itself. Because I think with things like AI, right, everything's only going to get more and more complex. So you really need to be able to discern what that problem is you're trying to solve if you want to make that kind of impact. And so the first step is like really getting this framework down. I already have kind of like the getting from 0 to 1 framework that I've done. And so that'll be kind of like what I do for the rest of the year. And then early next year, I want to run 2 pre-accelerators to really walk people through the company building process, especially in the more like mission capital. I use a bunch of different words because I realized in that space, people use like philanthropic, mission aligned, impact, and they all have their pros and cons.
We love our phrases.
Yeah, so I try to use all of them because I'm like,
phrases and labels.
You can be a part of this, but it's really around uniting capital, building companies that solve that, and then kind of de-risking them because they understand the problem so well, and the financial backers are incentivized to care about that problem solving as well. And so I want to be able to get in kind of like early investment at smaller checks, but also so people can kind of see how it works without building out the whole studio model.
Yeah.
And I'm also like kind of using this framework on myself, right? I think there's a huge opportunity in helping people realize this and building companies against problem statements. But also I'm not married to the solution, which is something I tell founders not to be all the time. Like it doesn't, that's why I try not to say studio, right? It's like, I'm doing these things to test it out. And if I get to the end of pre-accelerate, actually, it shouldn't be a studio model. It should be some kind of new model, or probably knowing me, some kind of hybrid model that no one's done before. And like, that's okay. But like, if we're solving the problem and if we're uniting the capital, if we're building against these problem statements and we're building great financially viable companies, whatever solution does that best is what I want to be doing in a year-ish time.
Yeah. This is really exciting.
Thank you.
When I knew we were going to be talking today, I was thinking this was going to be more of a investing conversation. Mm-hmm. But in some ways, this is beautiful because it's letting people see that you're also an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
That like venture capitalists in many ways are entrepreneurs. And you're a wonderful example of that. In, this MVP and this testing, this accelerator, like, testing to really find out what is going to, resonate with the marketplace.
Yeah.
How was fundraising? What was that experience like for you when you were raising capital for your fund? And as you think about raising for this enterprise?
So fundraising to me was like, I say it was really hard, but not in the sense that I wasn't able to do it. But it was hard for me as a product person because it felt like there was nowhere I felt like I couldn't roadmap it out. Like there was like no small bit to big bit to like build on something. It felt kind of all or nothing. And I always felt like I was selling an idea or even myself in a way that I was really uncomfortable with versus like the vision. And it took me, and also I think like people are really well-meaning, but they give advice based on what they heard or maybe what works for them. And I think a big secret in VC is that everyone's fundraising story is so different. Yeah. But and for startup founders too, but the advice they give is pretty generic. And it took me not a long time, but like it took me some time to be like, okay, like this isn't going to work for me. But then having to figure out what will work for me. And what's really nice about Patternist is that I figured out how it can work for me. And a big thing that ironically people in VC don't talk a lot about is money, right? If you're fundraising for a fund, it costs a lot of money. It costs hundreds of thousands of dollars a year just to fundraise.
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it best when you said it takes money to raise money.
It takes a lot of money to raise money. And like, I mean, luckily at that time I had savings, but you go through those savings and it was kind of becoming this like weird thing where you're like, okay, if I don't fundraise, then like, how am I going to pay my rent? And that doesn't put you in a great place to build the relationships and to do it in a way that is setting a great foundation for yourself. But with Patternist, I'm really thinking about like, okay, how can I build all the things I need from the very beginning and do it in a way that I think works best for me, which is I'm very much a builder. I'm very much I mean, I love when people love me. Like, let's be clear. I'm a Leo, so I guess that's my thing.
I'm a Leo too. Love you.
Yes. But like, I don't want people to give me money just because they like me. Like, even though it sounds nice, at the end of the day, I want to build something that's long lasting. So I need you to believe in the thing that I'm building and also believe that I can do it. And that's what I'm looking for in investors. And that kind of takes time. And so I'm also allowing myself the time to be able to build those relationships in a way that's authentic, where I'm still building the thing. I'm still working on, like, every day I can kind of see like how this thing is growing, and it's a little bit more tangible to me. And I think I need that tangibleness in order to really feel more and more confident and to be able to kind of see the ball getting rolling and getting bigger in a way that when I was like fundraising for the fund, it was hard to keep sight of. And also just like, again, I think VC, and part of the reason I call it Patternist, one, I'm a huge Octavia Butler fan. And so like the Patternist series is like one of my favorites.
Love that.
But I want to create new patterns in VC. I want to create new patterns about who gets to be a founder, how you think about company, how do you think about wealth building, how do you think about financial returns versus social impact. Again, like I think those things have been thought of as so separate, and they're not in my head. And I think these are the kind of patterns I want to build. And it's really cool that I figure out a way to join all of those things together, which is really exciting for me.
Yeah. And I can see it. I can see the excitement.
Yeah.
Just seeing your journey, I can feel it coming from you. So you said that there's a lot of advice given and it's kind of generic, but is there two things that you could, or one that you could share with our listeners as advice for going out and raising capital? One
I say
takeaway.
that, I think it's really important to figure out what are your non-negotiables for an investment partner. Whether that's like you're really mission driven, so you need that person to be on board with the mission. Whether that's, how you want to build your team, or if you're thinking about diversity and inclusion, whatever that is, but what are your non-negotiables are, and be very clear about those from the beginning.
I love that. That's a great one. Women of color, female founders, is there a intentionality around that in the work you're going to be doing, or does that just come as a result of what you're going to be doing?
I think it'll just come. It's less intentional, and it's funny you bring that up, because something I always like.
And I ask because a lot of times, just because we're Black, they think the things we do is Black.
Yeah. Well, no. And that's what happened with, like, when I talked about women of color, they're like, oh, because you're a Black woman. And this also, the blending of impact capital versus diversity capital has been really unfortunate, I think, as well.
Oh, my God. Can I tell you, that's like one of my biggest pet peeves. You go to a meeting, they're like, hey, this is Matt. He's a venture capitalist. Oh, do you know Gayla? She's an impact investor. When the hell did I ever say I was an impact investor? It is nowhere in our materials on our website. So why are you calling me an impact investor? I mean, I've been called worse, don't get me wrong, but like, it's really a pet peeve of mine.
No, it's a huge, and it's funny, I was talking to this woman, she's the head of the Fairfield County Community Foundation, and she was the one who really helped me articulate the
I think
discomfort.
I know her. She's a Black woman?
Yeah.
We didn't want to talk about that.
We do know each other. But like, she really helped me understand that, because I felt that, but I couldn't articulate it because I didn't really know much about impact investing at the time. I just know I kept getting shoved into these weird boxes that I didn't understand. And like you're saying, like, oh, I'm an impact investing usually at its core means like, in order to make the social returns, I'm going to care less about the financial returns. And what I was saying is like, I'm investing in women of colors because I think it will elicit huge financial returns.
That's right.
And so we're saying actually very different things, but I didn't know exactly how to articulate to people. It just felt this like tension. And so that comes in line with what I'm doing now. It's like, I'm looking for the people who are going to understand the complexity of the world, who understand where this world is going, who understand these problems really well. And if we're talking about societal problems, women of color are going to understand those very, very well. And I think even bringing in people who might normally try to build a nonprofit in this space and getting them to think about the financial way that they could do, like a financially viable way they could do it, is going to yield so much impact, not just in like a philanthropic sense, but like getting more people in the finance industry to understand how social and financial impact really come together and don't necessarily have to negate each other. And so again, starting those new patterns, I think like it'll just be a part of the organization, to be honest, but at this point isn't like a direct, what is that word? Direct narrative around it.
Yeah. Are we ready? Is society, is our sector, our investors ready?
Honestly, I don't know. But I was
Well,
going to say, I
that's
don't
what you're
care.
going to find out.
I was like, but I also kind of don't care.
You do care because you need them to be ready so they can,
but I think
they can underwrite what you're doing.
what I think is interesting, though, I've been reading or listening to the audiobook of a book called The Challenger Sale, which has been really helpful for me because I had this guy I met. He's an M&A lawyer, and I was telling him about the problem work before it became defined in my head, so I was kind of just yammering. And he was like, this would be really interesting for like buying and selling. Like people are trying to solve problems with buying and selling, but they don't have to understand. You should talk to like M&A people or like investment banks. And I was like, oh, yeah. But he was like, also, you're a challenger. I was like, well, I don't know what you're talking about. So he's like, read this book. And what the Challenger Sale talks a lot about is like the 3 like tenets are like teach, tailor, and take control. But it's not necessarily about people being ready in the sense of like, again, here's the solution. It's more about like helping people understand like insights, helping them see themselves in those insights, and then wanting to do things differently. And like you just conveniently, your solution helps them do that thing differently.
Oh, interesting.
And so it's less, at least for me, that's what I'm like, I think if I was like, hey, like foundations, don't you want to do venture studios? They'd be like, what the heck are you talking about? But if I'm talking to them, I'm like, hey, if you think of yourself in a portfolio manner, you could actually be making quite a bit of impact in the financial sector by having these companies and showing that being mission aligned and thinking about financial returns actually don't negate each other. Or like, even I've talked to some people, I'm like, why does your program site have to be a cost center? Why can't they actually contribute to the full mission of the organization, which is also giving financial returns to the organization? So again, it's not about like, some of it is readiness, right? But it's more about, again, focusing on the problem and less on the way you do it.
Yeah. I like this. How do we support you? How does the community rise up and
I think just thinking about that, like again, right now, if you're a founder who's excited about this, maybe you're struggling with trying to figure out who your ICP is, or you think you have a great idea, but you're not really sure who has it. Like I would love to like do the framework with you and help like really solidify the work that you're doing. If you're more on the investment side, whether that's risk capital or mission-driven capital, whatever you want to call yourself, but you're interested in like solving a real problem, please come talk to me. I think like I want to do these 2 pre-accelerators. I'm not necessarily, again, married to the problems we solve, but I want to like show that we can build companies and solve these problems. So if you're interested in that, I'd love to talk to you. Those are like kind of the quick ways. But even today I had someone who's this amazing woman. She was like helping me with branding. We were talking about the seed to harvest to like Patternist VC like change. And I was like, she was like, I love the branding seed to harvest. I was like, yeah, I'm actually going to keep it as like kind of like the nonprofit side for some more of like general like founder work that we had started doing before. But in like ecosystem building, also I'm a huge kind of what you're talking about, emerging managers being founders earlier. Like that is something that's so big for me and something I care a lot about, is like helping build an ecosystem where emerging managers, especially emerging managers who haven't traditionally been able to do it, so non-white dudes, be able to build these funds and build these institutions. And so that'll be some of that work. But I was like, I don't do branding. Like there's a reason I partner with a designer. I love bullet points and I don't know color schemes. And so she was even helping me with that. And that's okay. And so like, she's like kind of offered to help me kind of walk me through that and be someone I can talk to. So those are the things I'm thinking about. And if you're just even interested in what I'm doing, I'd love to talk.
Awesome. This is an exclusive, so it is so early. We got the first peek into what you're doing. So there is not a website.
No, but there will be.
There will be.
That'll be my website.
There will be. And it might even be up by the time we publish this episode. But is LinkedIn your preferred mode of contact right now?
That is the best way to reach out to me at the moment.
So we will make sure everyone that you've got Victoria Kennedy's LinkedIn contact info. We will also get this book. I'm really excited to read this book.
Yeah, the Challenger Sale is really like, it really helped me be like, because I kind of actually do this naturally in a way that I think bother people. I would like go to things and talk, and they'd be like, Victoria, did you tell them you have a VC yet? And I was like, oh no, I'm getting to that. And they'd be like, Victoria, you cannot do that. But it's like, it's not natural for me to lead to solutions. So if I can talk to you and get you to buy into the problem and be like, yes, yes, yes. By the time I say, oh, do you want to invest my fund? It's a very different conversation than I just start off with like, I'm building a fund, which they hear all day.
Yeah. That's a great takeaway also for startups, because I think so often they lead with like, here's what I built and here's the money I need.
Yeah. Which I get. Again, we get that advice to do so. You have 20 seconds. How do you make an impact? Yeah. And some people are actually great at that. That doesn't mean you don't. You have to. Everyone has to do it that way. Again, sorry, not to be annoying, but patterns, it's like you don't have to do everything the same way. It's about the thing that works for you.
That's right. That's right. Anything else you're reading? Like, what do you do when you're not thinking these big, complex, cool thoughts?
I was gonna say, sorry if this is too personal, but it's not. I'm 36 now, but when I was 35, my therapist was like, you have ADHD. She like been gently telling me this, but like increasingly, like finally was like, you have ADHD. And I was like,
but that's good to know.
Yeah.
You need,
But I was like, I wasn't necessarily upset about the like title. I was like, I'm 35. How has this never come up for me? So then, of course, I just delved into reading a bunch, especially about women and ADHD. And that really, I found Reddit to be the most useful place, weirdly enough. But I actually just finished Neurodivergent Mind, which is especially about like women with ADHD. And it's been in autism. And that's just been really helpful for me to understand a lot about like things that I always thought were kind of weird, or things.
Yeah, it tells you a little bit about how you're wired and
and like why certain things are hard for me, like why like can I organize my kitchen? But yes, I feel like I can build a framework around problem definition, opportunity mapping. That's fine, but organizing my kitchen is
spoons go.
You can't do this.
I love it. Thank you for opening up. We should have you back because there's so many more things we could be talking about and unbundle and unpack here. But thank you for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thanks for letting me
Absolutely.
Not be what you expected to be.
Listen, we've been trying to get you on here for a while, but you know what? Things happen for a reason. So I'm glad it's happening now at the beginning of your next chapter, which is Patternist. Yeah. Thank you, Victoria Kennedy.
Thank you so much. That was great.
This episode of VCs Off the Record is brought to you by Walkstar Ghetto Film School Entrepreneurial Academy. All right, so she's bold.
I mean, does she just not have the biggest brain? Like, I want to be her when I grow up.
Yeah. First of all, I really identified with her ADHD diagnosis and really explaining I too have ADHD. And when I understood that this is how my brain works, it really helped me in my world, just like functioning through. When you know what's going on, you're better prepared to deal with it.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
But it also explains it how she's juggling.
Yeah.
She's rapid fire and just.
But the choreography is beautiful to see.
Yes, the choreography.
It's beautiful to see. It was interesting she was diagnosed in her 30s. I wonder what that would be like versus like in your teens or your 20s.
I don't know. I just know that for myself, it's just you're living with the confusion on why you're different, with how you process, how you learn through school. You know, and it's I'm gonna get that book that she talked about.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah,
right, we're gonna put it on the website.
We're gonna put it everywhere.
Yeah, everywhere. Everyone should get that book.
But like, so okay, when she said, hold on, when I lost my where.
It takes money to make money.
Right.
Let's start there.
It takes money to raise money.
To raise money, not make money. Raise money. Well, both. Both. Yeah. But to raise money, I thought that was so powerful. Everyone needs to hear that you need money to raise money.
But not everybody has access, right, to the same access.
Yes.
Right? So it just means that the uphill climb for fund managers are different, right?
Yes. But I will say this. I'll push back a little bit.
Yes.
I truly believe in the 7 degrees of separation, the Kevin Bacon model, that there is enough treasure, talent, teammates, what have you, within all of our networks. I truly believe that.
So what prevents people from getting it?
I think it's a mindset. I think it's a mindset in really believing that you can access that you have allies that can help you access it. And when you flip that switch and start to say, you know what? She's got some treasure. She's got some talents. She can be an ally. He can be an ally. He may be 2 degrees from the ally I actually need to get to. I think it starts to open the world up.
What do you think are the biggest, like,
I was just going to say, like, listen, I'm sure everyone would love to know fill in the blank billionaire, but like there are tons of people around us that can help uplift and underwrite and capitalize our dreams and our visions. And we don't need to leapfrog to, again, fill in the blank with whatever billionaire that's in the news today or tomorrow.
I think I can say this secret that you're writing right now about raising capital for something that's hopefully coming out next year.
Yes.
Depending on when you're listening to this.
Now you just made me accountable. Like,
yes,
you see what you just did?
You see what I did?
All right, I know what I'm doing this weekend.
Yeah.
Writing.
What are the accelerators to raising capital and the roadblocks? If just one or two that you think off the top of your head.
One of the accelerators is how you invite people into what you're doing. We spend so much time asking people, we need to flip the switch and start inviting. It changes the trajectory of how you raise by an order of magnitude. I've seen it personally with myself. We teach it to other founders and seen the change. So that's something for accelerating. Stop asking, start inviting. Challenge, I think, is that we keep going to the same usual suspects. Everyone's trying to get to Ford Foundation, MacArthur Foundation. Everyone's trying to get to BlackRock, to Sequoia, XYZ VC fund, put in any name. We got to stop thinking about the top 10 and think about all the others out there. So I think the challenge is that we don't do the homework and really work through that 7 degrees of separation to find the right people. We're all just going after the same usual suspects.
And if somebody
not what you thought I was going to say, is
no,
it?
Not at all. Not at all. But I think I've heard you say invite, not ask before, but I never took it into the big concept of, because you think about VCs and fund managers managing lots and lots of money, right? You don't think about it, you think you got to ask for it.
The first $1 million check that we got into our fund was not from a usual suspect. The dairy farmer that has invested in our fund is not a usual suspect.
Can anybody be a VC? Can anybody decide I want to be a fund manager? Assuming they have some sort of, I could not do this. Let's assume that somebody has financial literacy, big money banking, financial literacy. Can anybody become a VC? Is it a job that needs a certain type of temperament or a gambler? Or what kind of temperament does it take?
Yeah. Listen, it's not rocket science,
right?
I always want to start with that. But I do believe that the people that will be more successful at investing are those that are truly, genuinely curious about the world. Because they're the types that start to envision different scenarios, different pattern matching, different solutions. They see problems differently because they're always just inquisitive. They're inquiring. They want to know why. So can anyone be a venture capitalist? But can anyone be successful? That's the difference. And I think it's that curiosity, that inquisitiveness. And then obviously the raw talent and skills need to be there.
Right. What was your takeaway from your talk with her?
I was really fascinated by this new model that she's ideating and designing, which is thinking about the capital stack in a hybrid way, which will encompass traditional VC and traditional investors that are looking for returns in a typical, in traditional timeframes and traditional structures, coupled with impact and mission-related funding, be it grants, be it donors, different types of funding structures. I was really fascinated by that because so much of what we do, it's either a grant, it's a loan, it's, a safe, it's a convertible note, right? It's all these different types of instruments that we use. And she's thinking about the gamut and how do you sort of bring all of those into the organization as a way to grow an organization. And that to me is really interesting, particularly when you think about the problems that we'll be solving in the future do have and will have a social component to them. That we're not simply going to be creating mobile apps for the sake of mobile apps. Remember, there was a time when everyone was creating a mobile app and trying to sell it and Now people are trying to solve problems that impact people's lives, right? We're trying to figure out climate. We're trying to figure out, how to solve natural disasters, right? So there's a social component to these things, right? The healthcare, seniors, aging population, all of the things that entrepreneurs are building have a social component to them. And so why not have the funding that can support that understand and come from a mission or an impact-driven, as well as from the traditional VCs like myself? Could be really interesting. So I think we should all keep an eye on what she's doing because I think it speaks a lot to where we as a society are going to be going, and we need the dollars and the capital to rise up to meet in a different way.
Yeah, it's game-changing.
Yeah. All righty, everybody, get back to being fabulous, and we'll see you soon on another episode of VCs Off the Record. I'm your host, Gayla Jennings-O'Byrne, and I'm here with the amazing, fabulous Victoria Burt.
Bye, guys. Thanks for hanging with us. This podcast was produced by Walkstar Media in New York City at the Podstream Studios. Be sure to follow VCs Off the Record on Apple and Spotify. We're also on Sheconomy, the State of Women podcast platform. Please consider giving us a good review or share it with someone. Let us know what you want us to talk about on our socials and our YouTube channel. You can find us at walkstar.com for all the information.